good afternoon, or morning. Really depends on when you're going to view this. Alright, this is going to be my PS318 video recording, and it's going to be based on the foreign policy proposal co-star committee member, which is me. Mr. President and fellow co-star members, as a member of the Committee on the Strategic Transformation and Reform, as co-star, my team and I propose that a new strategy on how international affairs and conflicts should proceed in a manner that both demonstrates the power and mercifulness of our great nation. The creation of a new strategy, which has been determined to be in the best interest and is suited with direct interest of your new office of the presidency, as well as your administration's perceived desires. Our country's current foreign policy has turned our country into a paper tiger. This is taken straight from an Al-Qaeda website, which is probably distributed throughout the ranks. This paper tiger is the type of foreign policy that has delayed much of our movements. It's causing a lot of problems amongst our troops. The proposed strategy I am presenting is representative of the native ideas, principles, and long-term objectives, and developed and enunciated in a way that is universally applicable and globally acceptable in the global community. The native ideas of the American people should be standard, as in the standard, on how our country will conduct its foreign businesses. The ideas of the American people can be summed up in 3 words: liberty, justice, and prosperity. The most commonly known idea of the American people is liberty. One of the reasons that our country has so many immigrants is that they want to feel safe, knowing that justice and prosperity can be found here. If the American people appreciate that their government was considering making concessions to those groups or countries of people that mean to destroy other groups of people due to their religions or color, or even their nationality as a whole, actually pointing to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's been going on for roughly a century, maybe even more. The common American, just like me and you, takes pride in his or her military and government structure, not by putting very large amount of faith in a weak foreign policy. Traditionally, American foreign policy has been the offer of the opposing sides to surrender, or other modes of diplomacy, such as the failed peace talks with Japan just a couple weeks ahead of the attack of Pearl Harbor. That particular mode of diplomacy hasn't seemed to have worked in the past. The other proposal that your administration may or may not see proposes that our country's foreign policy be one that makes adjustments to please the other side enough so that when they cease, it'll be for a time at least whatever wrongdoings they may have been committing. However, the people of the United States are not interested in seeing the most powerful country in the world grovel to murderers and thieves. So it is suggested that our foreign policy be changed to the proposed foreign policy we are presenting today, in an effort to keep the people behind their government. Our foreign policy strategy should reflect our American principles. Liberty for all people is the dream that motivated our country's founding fathers to separate from the most powerful country of the time. Liberty is a basic human right that should be granted to all races of people and religions, with the standard of being that their peace is not accomplished by genocide, as is the case with the Balkans when he tore apart 8,000 Muslims for no reason. Human rights. The basic need for an American foreign policy for the government and the human rights across the world is vital for the well-being of people all over the world. Granted that our current foreign policy is already giving much-needed aid to places with very poor resources to maintain human rights protection. But there should be an unshakable standard, the standard when human rights are threatened around the world. These standards need to be concrete. There's no leeway in the amount of aid we will provide to an area. That's just... Anyways, I digest. An American principle that cannot go overlooked as well is commerce with our foreign partners. American foreign policy for the allowance of such internal violations of our American principles, such as genocide, human rights violations, basic ones, when it pertains to the previously mentioned principles, should be solid with very little room for adjustment. So, with the previous statement in mind, the bottom line should be that when violations to these principles are found, they are either dealt with by the country's governing body or by our country, which by my current location is what we've had to do in Iraq. For a nation with so much global power and influence to be associated with another country that practices violations to the extent that they are discovered would look bad on the United States throughout the world. It's very similar to choosing your friends wisely. We don't want to look bad in the global state of things. The United States cannot afford to make powerful enemies. So, with that being brought to your attention, we highly advise the office of the presidency to consider implementing a foreign policy that does not allow criminals, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, to some extent the Muslim Brotherhood, to actually have a business with the United States. And other examples of these types of groups would be the country of Iran, Korea, more specifically North Korea, and Cuba. We already don't have an economy dealing with Cuba. However, illegal things do come out of the illegal products and actually people. In regards to our foreign policy, one of our nation's top priorities is the prosperity itself, as well as of its allies. The United States has always had the idea of a global community which would flourish not under the rule of itself, but under their own laws. We just kind of nudge them in the correct direction, as we're doing now in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Granted, we might not be finishing the job in Afghanistan. That remains to be seen. In order to influence prosperity among our global partners, they need to have rules, or SOPs, standard of operations, if you will, perhaps to follow, if they wish, into a partnership with the United States and its allies. World population welfare is also one of the top concerns of our nation's current foreign policy. But the policy itself needs to be stricter and more rigid with its regulations, not giving help to countries that do not reflect our ideas, such as giving billions of dollars of aid to Pakistan, a country that we found Osama bin Laden in, and with intelligence agencies should have known he was there. He was roughly 20 miles away from a military training facility. That being said, if you break the rules, our foreign policy would dictate, or this new one will dictate, that we will not help you. You will drown, is what we're saying. The world population should not have to worry about its welfare due to some dramatic catastrophe. So, as it stands right now, our current American foreign policy has no discrepancy to report in that area. Case in point, Japan tsunamis and other disasters that have happened around the world, that we've helped to alleviate those countries from having to deal with that problem themselves. Another portion of the American foreign policy: destruction of terrorist organizations, as well as those suspected of being said so. Even if we suspect these groups of people being a terrorist organization committed to committing acts or crimes against humanity, should not be negotiated with or suffered to live. To maintain order of the world, we need to be able to free our consciousness. Because once all their leaders and members are brought to justice, or at least our foreign policy's measure of justice, by the pen, or in some cases, when necessary, by the bullet. I say this for one real reason. As soon as a human being commits a terrorist act, he should be determined as losing all rights as a human being, and dealt with like any other animal that is rabid or you can no longer use. The opposing document, you may see, is one that displays compassion for the terrorist groups, with its lights shined upon changing the amount of force, direct force, that a terrorist will understand, or how criminals are apprehended and or questioned, and what methods are to be used. I, for one, have no problem with methods that are used. Direct coercion is necessary to obtain information from a determined adversary. The foreign policy that our group possesses is one that will display the might and rigidity of our country as a whole. We are geometric and unwavering, and shouldn't. There are several problems with our current United States foreign policy, several of which you and your administration are aware of and have moved to correct. But hopefully, we have helped to point out some of the more subtle concepts. As a member of the COSTAR Committee, I personally agree that the United States new strategy should be representative of our native ideas, principles, and long-term objectives, and developed and enunciated in such a way that is close to universally acceptable in the global arena. Context and case should be reflected and influenced by our strategic ideals and goals, not the other way around. We do not need to adjust to a terrorist demand. If we do, that means they win. On behalf of the COSTAR Committee, I would like to thank you for the time you have taken to listen to me and our proposal. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.